My name is Joe Henson. I'm part, obviously, of the five-man action figure game team, Digital Cyber Cherries. We're making Hypercharge Unboxed, and I have many roles. So it's game designer slash marketing slash PR. It's very broad because we're such a small team. We all have very wide sort of roles and whatnot. But my main forte is marketing. But I think I mentioned to you previously, yeah, we have. I'm very much a part of the game's development, and I think this is why it's been sort of a recent success as well, because we all have such a deep input into the game.
And my first question for you, Joe, is where did the idea for Hypercharge Unboxed come from?
The original members now, the five of us on the team, we all worked on a game called Contagion, I think back in 2013. It was like a spiritual successor to Zombie Panic Source. And long story short, we decided to leave that, sort of avenue, or leave that team, and then form our own sort of company. And that then, fast forwarding even further, got us all to meet in Scotland, because I'm from the UK, but some of the team from the US and Germany, so we're all over. And we booked this place in Scotland, I think it was in Edinburgh, and it was just more of a meet and greet type thing. And it was just a really nice night. We're all eating pizza, having a bit to drink, and we're just sort of reminiscing, talking about, nothing specific, but more just general lads talking about games and what maybe could we do. And we had I don't know if it was a projector, it might have been a big TV in this like meeting room we had booked, and we just had small soldiers on in the background, and we're all talking. And it was a bit of a coincidence because Deck is a big fan of Counter-Strike 1.6, specifically the rat maps. So if you remember like D_Score Kitchen and things like that, so that kind of was like Small Soldiers was on in the background, and then he mentioned that at the same time, and we were like, you know what? Do you remember CS 1.6 rat maps? Like, yeah, I remember that. And then it got us to go on to, wait a minute, do you remember Honey I Shrunk the Kids the movie? Do you remember Toy Commander, Sarge's Heroes? And we're like, oh my god, like how have we forgotten about all these amazing games and films? Obviously Toy Story. And then it just hit us like, why did we like these games so much back then? Why were they so memorable? So we started like writing down notes as Small Soldiers were on, and we looked at Small Soldiers and we were like, well, in terms of aesthetics and immersion, Small Soldiers for us absolutely nailed it. It made it feel like it was actually a real thing, action figures being alive, like it could be possible, the way they did the animations and everything. So then our mind is ticking and going even further, thinking, this would be amazing as like a game. We know other games have done it in the past, but in our opinion, no games at the time and even now have really nailed that aesthetic part and the realism. When I say realism, I mean pulling that imagination from our childlike selves, when we used to have imaginary toy battles. So yeah, we just looked at films like Small Soldiers, Toy Story, Honey I Shrunk the Kids, and then games Sarge's Heroes, Toy Commander, and we just wrote loads of notes down. And all these films and games where you were just a small toy or action figure inspired us, because there's just something special about being that small. The world looks so different, all magical almost, and that kind of pushed us towards even more ideas, in terms of gameplay and what we're going to do. But yeah, to answer it shortly, it's Small Soldiers which kind of ignited the flame.
No, that's funny. I mean, I was born and was raised in that city of Orange where they filmed Small Soldiers.
Oh, really?
Orange, California,
awesome.
Yeah, is where they filmed it, and it's a very famous like downtown area that they filmed a lot of the movies. And then of course like the suburban neighborhoods are a soundstage,
Yeah.
but the main town where he's in, where his dad's shop is, that's the city of Orange.
Oh.
So yeah, that was a cool thing to see in a movie. I'm like, oh my god, I know where that is, that kind of thing. Like I've been there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So talk about like the gameplay in this game, you guys. I mean, I've been seeing you guys all over Twitter. You guys are tweeting like little gameplay clips and little updates. Talk about like the different biomes and different weapons, and if you have a class system and how all the gameplay works.
So the gameplay works in the sense that it's ultimately a wave-based shooter with, you could call it tower defense, but it's more, I'd say, sort of defense building mechanics. I know players might say, what's the difference? Well, we don't really take inspiration from traditional tower defense mechanics per se. It's more, here's some collect resources and build some defenses, for example, like tank traps, maybe some rocket turrets, anti-air turrets. So it's a wave-based shooter, and you start the level by you actually spawn in your toy box. You break out of it. You see like the plastic on the box, pushes out, which is awesome. And then then we call it build or exploration mode, where very platform focused. So you're searching for coins and credits, hidden secrets, hidden like bobbleheads, sort of optional things. And you have like depending on the difficulty mode, you have a time limit to find these resources, batteries as well, because there is a bit of power management in the game. But essentially, you start the game, find resources, and the challenge is kind of the time. You've got to look. You've got to be careful not to get too immersed in the environment, because a lot of players get too distracted by reading all the little cool things on the boxes and just real life objects. And then once that's over, enemies start spawning from different directions, angles, vents, doorways, just every sort of small area where a toy could get through. And then the main objective at this point is to defend what we call a hypercore. I think on each map there's about 3, maybe sometimes 4 or 5, but normally it's about 3 hypercores you have to defend. So enemies will go and attack the hypercore, and at the same time enemies will attack the player. So you have to be really aware of 3 things: not getting destroyed by enemies, defending the hypercores, and also being aware of your power management, because if you don't power up your defenses, it makes it a little harder. So that's kind of the general idea of the gameplay. It's a wave-based shooter where you're defending these cores, or hypercores, and you earn medals. So if one hypercore gets destroyed, or if you as a player die, you respawn. If 2 hypercores die, you can still keep playing the game. It's when all hypercores get destroyed, that's when it's game over. However, it's based on medals. So if you can defend all the hypercores and they take no sort of damage, because the hypercores have a shield. So they have a shield and then they have health. If the actual health takes damage, then you won't get the best. You won't receive the best medal. So that's kind of the idea with the gameplay.
That's really cool. Talk about some of the environments that you're defending in. They're really, like you said, people get distracted because you have all this attention to details, all these toys and models, and
yeah.
And then to also talk about the process of trying to be creative with toys you have to put in your game, because obviously you can't use Hot Wheels because it's a brand name, but you can use cars that are similar to Hot Wheels and tracks that are still orange, like that kind of stuff.
So environments range from things like a toy store, but it's primarily like a toy aisle, but it's all pretty much everything's handmade by us. So every shelf is stacked with cool, like say, knockoff parody type toy boxes, action figures. We've got our own versions of I won't say the word just in case, but certain guns that fire plastic things, if you know what I'm talking about. I mean, things like that. And there's bedrooms, bathrooms, a garden level. What else? There's quite a kitchen, an attic. It's all basically everything you'd find in your house, and then a little bit more. And in terms of how we sort of the inspiration for our own version of toys. I mean, with that clip, the clip which I'm presuming you saw on Twitter, which went mega viral, that had an action figure which everybody was saying, "Oh, it's Goku. Goku's a toy." I mean, I say it's not Goku. That was Noku, but it's like a
Noku,
little
yeah,
joke.
no, it's
Yeah.
Noku. It's different, completely different.
But we obviously have taken inspiration from past TV shows, from other games. So when you get in, I like to basically say, Hypercharge is a big ball of nostalgia. So the way we have designed it is we want you as a player to go in and think, I remember that toy. Oh wait, I can play my favorite character, even though it's not that character, but you can get that connection instantly. So that's kind of the idea. We want you to be flooded with the nostalgia and of times gone past, and just constantly have a big smile on your face and just remember all these awesome times that you've likely forgotten.
You guys have a lot of different enemies in the game, like toy soldiers, like airplanes, robots, like you kind of dinosaurs. You kind of run the gamut. But I'm curious if like insects was brought up at all, like in the design process, because you are small, and like a spider or a grasshopper would be pretty big at that size.
So I mean, there is a character type called Insectoid, which you play as, where you got like a cool ant sort of action figure face and bug-like features. But in terms of enemies, it's difficult. So with certain enemies, from a technical point of view, I'm limited to an extent of how I can answer this, but I know it's not. Put it this way: it's simpler to design an enemy like a bouncy ball or a spinner, as opposed take your use, for example, a grasshopper, because you've got to think about how does it animate, its animations, its attacks. There's lots of other things which do come with it. So I'm not saying it's not impossible other enemy types, but it's something that we'd have to see how far we can go into it. I mean, we have thought about even spiders at one point, but then there's the whole how do you pronounce it, arachnophobia type.
Arachnophobia,
yeah, which is a big thing, so we don't want to like Hypercharge is designed for kids ultimately, so we don't want to like scare people away with this type of stuff. So, but we'll see. Maybe it's something we definitely have had discussions about adding in potentially in the future.
And when you're making a game like this, I mean, does your team ever get nervous about like you're gonna get hit with like a cease and desist order or some kind of copyright notice off a toy that some major billion-dollar corporation bought the license to 30 years ago and hasn't done anything, but now they want their cut? Like, does that come up a lot of meetings? Like, has that happened in its process so far?
To my knowledge, it's never come up. I mean, I would have known, but we're very wise about this stuff. We get very good advice, put it that way. So anything where we felt, or the advice given, if they said, it's a little bit, if they advised us not to do it, we wouldn't do it. So that's never happened. I think we've got a good understanding of what can and can't be done in this nature.
Have you guys considered like reaching out for like sponsorships for your game? Like specifically, I know there's a lot like toys, especially nowadays. Like kids don't play with them anymore. It's really got too many for a toy manufacturer to try to get your product out there to be put in the game. Have you guys had meetings like that, or is that open to discussion?
So it's something that we've actually had some companies reach out to us, to be honest, about potentially doing something. But I think for us, I mean, we'd have to talk more about it, but we'd like to try and establish Hypercharge as its own brand of action figures, if you see what I mean, and then expand it that way. And so we're sort of in, we have control in the respect of how creative we can be, because if we did get real brands in and whatnot, it could lose the personality of the game, meaning that we couldn't do this fun parody type stuff anymore, and it could be less impactful, But that's something we'd have to have more of a discussion about here.
So how's it been like supporting this game over the last 2 years? And like, I mean, as you move on to different platforms, like does that become more of a challenge? I know crossplay is something that's almost standard now. It wasn't even a conversation 10 years ago, but now people expect it, which is crazy. Like, what's going on with that stuff as well?
It's been a mixed bag of emotions, the journey of like bringing it out on Switch, Steam Early Access, then Steam, because I think one thing we as people do naturally is we've had so many people reach out, and it's still happening now with what's happened with Hypercharge, and they assume that the game has always been that sort of known, or they think, when something explodes into popularity, people just rightly so think, it's always been the case. But with Hypercharge, it's not like it's not always been the case. We've had to. It's been a very slow process of listening to player feedback, learning from our mistakes, implementing. I think we've gone over 8 major updates. Launching the game on Switch, which technically speaking was for our type of game was a magnificent feat to do. So it's been very difficult and inspiring to release it on those platforms. In terms of like where do we go next with what we're gonna launch on?
Like you mentioned before, like some of these games are a slow burn. It's like with Among Us example, that game was out for years, no one cared, and then all of a sudden it became literally popular quite literally overnight, and then everyone's expecting crossplay and all these features and microtransactions, and these devs were like, well, this game has been out for 4 years, we were thinking about shutting it down last week.
Yeah, they were literally, weren't they? Yeah.
But no, like you were right with that slow burn stuff. Like people need to buy the game, people need to know about the game before you start investing all this infrastructure and money into crossplay and Xbox and PlayStation and all these other platforms.
Yeah. So crossplay, again with 5 developers is something that we've partially already got working. It's funny because, so just to fill you in, excuse me, somebody's stuck in my throat. We originally started Hypercharge in 2015, and that version of Hypercharge was actually more PvP focused. It was still action figures, but very PvP focused. And maybe I get the dates kind of not so accurate here, but roughly speaking, we spent about maybe a year and a half, maybe a year working on that version. And because we were new, sort of doing our own thing in terms of a new company and whatnot, we had that lack of experience, and you've probably heard of feature creeping. So the actual scope of that version of Hypercharge was moving into 2016, was getting really sort of out of control. So we brought somebody else on who took the project lead. So we had a few more members of the team then. We may have been from 5 members to about 8 members then. So from 2015, we had the original version, Hypercharge, PvP focused. We feature creeped till about 2016 and whatnot. Then we had a project lead who then helped to try and steer the direction more, keep more focused on a main gameplay sort of loop, which then we transitioned to the co-op side more on the building aspect. Then I think a year later, then after that, we launched Steam Early Access. It was a massive disaster. We launched on a summer sale. Honestly, like factually speaking or financially speaking, the game was just it tanked. Like people it wasn't well received. Nobody knew it existed.
It's hard. No, it's hard. I mean, the last time I checked the metrics, there are like 110 games per week released on Steam. Like, it's insane. You get drowned out really quickly.
It really is. So when that happened, the rest of the new teams, the new project lead and whatnot, they all decided to leave. And the original members from 2015, I hope I'm making sense of all this, we all decided to stay because essentially we had 2 choices. Do we try and make the best of the worst that we've been left with, or do we just quit altogether game development or as a team, because it would have cost more money to start again. We couldn't really do it because of the money and the time and the tech that had been put into it. And I say tech like UE4 or the coding and everything else that goes into the game. It had a good base already there. So moving on, I had the idea, right, let's try and get all the player feedback we have and then implement it in certain updates. But let's not release these updates like weekly or monthly. We need to create a second buzz. Nobody knows about Hypercharge. This is my process, my mind thoughts from a marketing point of view. Nobody knows about it. Let's use that to our advantage. So I came up with something called Early Access 2.0. Let's relaunch the same game as Early Access 2.0. So fast forward again to, I think it was 2018. We spent about a year and a half listening to community feedback, doing doing like sort of private beta type stuff who get access to the game, a very small group of people, and us just doing our best to listen to previous feedback. And yeah, we launched Early Access 2.0 when we actually, the whole game, probably 9.8% of the game's DNA, we reworked, rechanged. So the animations, the UI, the UX, the sound design, the core gameplay, just everything, we had to get under the hood and redo it ourselves. So it was basically like a new game, and that version, so re-releasing it, I say re-releasing, it wasn't just a big update. We actually made more sales, relatively speaking. It was great for us then. It was nothing like now, but we got more exposure and more sales a year and a half later in early access again. So that speaks volumes. So then what happened was we kept on updating the game again, tried to get more buzz, but as you said yourself, it's very difficult. You're a small team, no marketing budget, everything's in-house. So we thought, we're struggling here. So we're like, wait a minute, there's not many first-person shooters with gyro support on the Nintendo Switch. So we thought, let's get it on the Nintendo Switch. It's your action figures, put it with the right audience. Somehow, we managed to do it. Deck, he's the lead programmer. He did the bulk of the work. Managed to get it working on the Nintendo Switch really well. And that was like a lifeline for us because we launched then in 2020 January, and that gave us a little bit of sales and just trickle through. So if you see what I mean, like from 2015, it's just been trickling ups and downs. We've just kept pushing and listening to feedback and believing in ourselves and the product. So then that brings us to April 2020. We were officially going to leave early access on Steam. Now, a lot of people don't know with that is when we left Steam early access to April 2020, we actually became a top seller for about 2 days, but nothing like what happened now. It came and then sort of went. But for our team size, that was amazing. It was a second lifeline again, could keep us going. So since 2020, we've just done our best to grow awareness of the game, keep listening to the community, keep implementing their main feedback while still keeping our sort of core vision of the game. We want players to enjoy. And then it came to about, I think, to that end of 2021. I thought, we always knew we'd go to Xbox and PlayStation. We reached out, got some development kits, briefly tested it on it, and it works pretty well already without hardware optimization on these consoles. So I was like, let's try and see if Hypercharge resonates well with Xbox players, because the type of game it is and the type of audience, from my experience, Xbox players might enjoy, because it's got split screen support, local, co-op PvP. It's a great family game, no gore. And I tested a tweet, it did really well, something like targeting, Xbox players. It was just some out of the blue. And that ended up going viral. And Chris Charler, the director of Indies Xbox, I think he is, he reached out and saw the tweet. Then we had a meeting with him. They were very interested in Hypercharge and our plans, because again, it confirmed my suspicion that they think it'll do well on Xbox. It will resonate well with Xbox players. And then about 2022, started doing a few more Xbox things, and then I had the idea of, right, let's really focus on Xbox and let's try and see where it goes. And then just kept doing our best, and eventually I did a tweet with a really good gameplay clip. And
that's the Toy Store one. I think that's everywhere, right?
So at that point, we know we're going to be on Xbox. We've spoken to Xbox quite a few times. They've been very supportive. So in my mind, I was like, nobody's heard of Hypercharge. It's going to be new to them, and it's going to be a game on a new platform. And when we launch an Xbox, we're not rushing into it. We're waiting until we have the story campaign implemented. We're waiting until all these big improvements. Basically, we want to give Xbox players the best version of Hypercharge possible. We don't want to rush it and then release updates afterwards, because as you know, first impressions count. So that's important to us. And then again, cross-platform. We hope to get it working across all consoles. If not, it'll be some. But if we can, we hope to get it working across them all. So that's kind of just to fill you in, the journey of how it got us here. It's just been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of pizza, tears, more pizza, and tugging away really. And yeah, with that funny when everything went viral, it was Xbox focused, sort of the marketing campaign, if you want. I mean, I say it was a marketing campaign. It was more, I literally just did a tweet out of the blue. There was basically, I don't know how much you followed it, but basically I was receiving a lot of abuse prior to me doing these tweets about Xbox, because they were getting so much traction every time I'd talk about it. So I was telling us Xbox players really want Hypercharge, and there was a lot of abuse happening, people harassing us for a release date and this and that. And I released a statement about mental health and people being toxic towards developers. That gained a bit of traction. And then the reason why I posted this tweet that went really viral, I keep saying it was a marketing campaign, but it was because I was getting discouraged to post about Xbox because of all this harassment and toxicity. So then when I released these statements, I got a lot of positive feedback, a lot of even Sarah Bond from Xbox reached out to me, loads of support flooded in, and then that's when because on the tweet it says positive vibes, if you call it that, and that's why I posted it. So again, it was just, I felt positive after feeling really down, just did a tweet. There wasn't too much thought that actually went into it. It just exploded. And then yeah, all that pushed all that traction towards Steam. That was never our intention. And then we became, I think, number 2 in the top sellers on Steam for a good few days. And we stayed in the top 10, top 15 for about a week. And then we got loads more Switch sales. It just basically, it's been like a second release for us on other platforms. We performed better than the 2020 leaving early access. So it's basically given us a new lease of life. So and for Xbox and the consoles, I think it'll be a different ball game again, because this has really gotten the game's name sort of out there.
And the last thing I want to ask is where can people go to support your game? Where can they find an update, your Discord, your website, your Steam page? Like, where can they go to find more information about Hypercharge?
So if people want to play the game now, they can just type in Hypercharge Unboxed on Steam. We also have a Discord, which is very active, which I think it's just discord.gg/Hypercharge Unboxed. And then Twitter, we're very active on there. That's at Hypercharge Game. And then for people who want to receive the latest news regarding Xbox, we have a newsletter, which is signup.playhypercharge.com. And again, that's in our Twitter handle. But yeah, that's where you can find the game. Just search Hypercharge Unboxed on Google, and there's a bunch of articles now all over. So